My name is Jake Howard. I'm a Product Data Management or PDM Specialist with Hockridge Systems, and this is another edition of the 3D Solutions Spotlight webinar series, our summer school edition. And if you haven't tuned in before, this is a kind of a series that we like to highlight a different SOLIDWORKS product or solution that we offer every week, and then we kind of give you some tips and tricks or talk about something specific related to that product to give you more information and help make sure that you're being productive and improve your workflows and all that. Obviously today we're talking about SOLIDWORKS PDM, but if you are interested in any of our other products, I'll show you here. Open up our web page. This is hockridgesys.com, which is our main website. If you go over to the videos link in the upper bar up there, and I'll click that. This is all of our recorded webinars and other videos that we offer here. So if you select the 3D Solutions Spotlight and filter by that, you can also filter by any of our other products on the left. So if you're interested in SOLIDWORKS PDM, you can click one of those and view all of our pre-recorded videos. I get that question a lot, like where do we go to access this if we don't find it live? And this is where you go to check out those. So definitely encourage you to check out those if you have some free time there. All right, but I'll go ahead and get started with this one. The title of this webinar is Top Tips and Solutions for Getting More Out of Your PDM System. So today, obviously, I'm talking about some kind of tips and tricks with the software, as well as I want to make sure I highlight some of our services related to PDM. Our services team is great and really useful. So I'll highlight some of the services we offer there, as well as some of the custom solutions that we offer that we've created for you to make sure that you're productive and save you some time with that. And I'll kind of explain what goes into that here in a minute. So I'll go ahead and get started. And the first thing I want to talk about is our PDM services team, which I'm on. I'm a PDM specialist here. There's, I think, I want to say 9 of us on the staff here that do PDM services, and we just focus on PDM all day long, every day. So we're very familiar with the software, and we should be able to help you out with any and all things related to PDM. So I want to highlight each of the major services we offer here, and then I'll kind of give you a tip or trick related to that service that'll kind of get you thinking about being more productive in that area. And as I go through, by the way, if you do have any questions for those of you that are tuning in live, feel free to type those into the chat box in the GoToWebinar window, and I won't be able to get to them as I go through the presentation, but at the very end I'll get to those if you do have any questions there. Okay, so PDM services, start with our first one here, our AutoPilot implementations. And if you're not familiar with what AutoPilot is, it's a quick start installation and customization for new vaults. So if you're coming into PDM for the first time, maybe you just purchased, AutoPilot is a great program that we offer that will, basically what it is we'll either come on site or do it online. We'll install all of the software for you, including SQL Server and PDM, and make sure it's set up and customized the way you need it. So, and then we'll import a bunch of best practice settings into the vault. It's kind of like a quick start to get you started with kind of up and running much faster than if you're trying to set everything up for the first time yourself and have a bunch of questions, and might take you a long time to do it that way, especially if you haven't implemented PDM before. So that's our service for getting you set up right. Usually what we say is when we do the PDM AutoPilot implementation, that'll get you like 75%, 80% of the way there right off the bat. And then from there we offer, included with the AutoPilot is some customization time. So kind of basically some consulting for PDM we can work with you to customize your vault for that extra 20-25% to get you, where you need to be as far as your specific workflows and processes. And with the AutoPilot implementation, this is my first kind of tip with this. One thing we do go over is your duplicate file name, how you want to handle duplicate file names. So I'll open up the administration tool here, and if you're not familiar with this, you may be familiar, may not be. If you've taken the PDM Administrator class before, we do go over this in that class. But from the PDM Administrator window, if I right-click the file types node over there on the left, it's kind of hidden a little bit. You get this duplicate file name setting option there, and this allows you to specify whether you want to allow the same two different files with the same file name in the vault. And this does take into account extensions. So what this is saying, if you're not allowing duplicate file names in the vault, we're not allowing two SLD PRT files to have the same name in the vault. It's totally fine to have a part with one name and a drawing related to that part with the same name. So it does look at the file extension of the file. But one thing that a lot of people don't know about this box is that this can be applied retroactively to your vault. So if you've already imported all of your old files or brought in all of your old files into the vault and you have a whole bunch of duplicate file names, you can change this. You can set it to allow for the first time you import all your files and then move it to do not allow duplicate file names in the vault. And what that does is, going forward, anytime you check in a file, it's going to do a check to check on whether that file's name is the same as anything else in the vault, and if it is, it'll pop up a box saying you're not able to check this in until you change the name, and here's the location of the other file. So you can do this retroactively after you've already imported everything into the vault. If you don't want to spend time, maybe you have a whole bunch of legacy files that you don't want to take the time to clean up and they have a whole bunch of duplicate file names and that kind of thing. It's fine if you want to leave those where they are. You just want to make sure that the allow duplicate file names into the vault is checked when you bring everything in, and then check do not allow duplicate file names in this vault after everything's already in there. You can also specify which extensions you want this to be valid for. So maybe you don't want to allow part files to be the same name, but you do want to allow PDFs or Microsoft Office files to be the same name. That's where you'd specify this in this box down below. I don't see that too commonly, but that's an option you have there. So that's one of the things you'd be looking at when we implement the vault for the first time with an AutoPilot, among many other things. So we have a whole list of customization and permissions and workflows and data cards. And if you're not familiar with what all those things are, big time saver as far as setting that up for the first time. So that's one service we offer, the AutoPilot. I would say that's probably the most popular option that we have. Another service that we offer is our trainings. And if you have gone through our administrator training, obviously you know we have those. We offer those both online and in person. So if you want to know more about the software, a great place to start is with a training. The administrator training, depending on the format you choose to do it in, whether it's online or in person, it's about a day-and-a-half class, so 12 hours. So 8 hours the first day and then 4 hours the second day for the in-person class. And that in that class we go over everything related to what I kind of similar to what I just showed, all of the settings in the administration tool, kind of best practice, setting everything up and what everything means and what it looks like to set it up. Typically with PDM, kind of an advantage and a disadvantage, I would say, within PDM is that it's, I like to say it's very set it and forget it as far as administration and IT are concerned. So a lot of times I see companies set it up for the first time, it's working great, they don't touch it for months, and then they come back to it and you're not super familiar with certain settings, and you don't know how to do a certain thing if you need to make a change. So the administration training is a great resource for that. We also have online pre-recorded training, so if you're interested in doing those, that's kind of a good way if you've already taken the administration class and you want a refresher, refresher classes are great for that kind of thing. And a lot of people also don't know that we offer user training classes in the same way, both online and in person. The user training class is not as in-depth as the administrator class, and usually what we see is we stick everyone in one room, maybe with a projector screen up there, and we show all of your users how to use the software, all of the different tools that are available in there, take them through the interface, what it's going to look like in their specific scenario. We may even take a look at your specific vault, so they can see what it's going to really look like when you go to kind of a production environment. And that class is usually we schedule out 3 hours for it. It may not even take even that long. And then during that time, it's kind of built in kind of a question and answer. So if they do have questions about, specific, what is this going to look like in my case, that kind of thing, we can always go through all that specific stuff in those classes as well. So those are the two different types of PDM classes we offer, the administrator training and the user training, both online and in person. And then I have some examples related to that, some stuff that we do go over in both the administrator and the user training. Customizing context menus. So if I browse into my Vault view here, I have this open. Maybe I'll minimize my PowerPoint there, show you. So I'm in my Vault view here. You see my green folders on the left there. One thing as a user that I can do, kind of a time-saving tip here, the PDM menu bar up here with the actions, modify, display, and tools drop-downs, if you right-click that menu, you get an option for customized menus. This is only available in SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional, not PDM Standard. But if I right-click that menu, that toolbar up there and say Customize Menus, it brings up a settings list here where I can customize not only what happens when I right-click in the Vault, so when I right-click the background, or if I right-click a file or a folder, or go to these different menus, so the actions, modify, display, and tools, you can customize what each of those drop-downs are showing. And this is user-specific, so you can customize this per user if you want to, if as a user you want to see something different than what you're seeing, you can always customize that here. But I also like to point out with it, if you right-click and say Customize Tools, it brings you to this menu not only to customize your right-click and menu and user interface, you also get all of these other options. And this is kind of a hidden settings menu, not really hidden, but kind of tucked away a little bit, where you can edit a lot of the different behaviors of PDM. And for you administrators, from within the administration tool, you can get to this as well. And it's a user setting or a group setting. So if you go to a user or group, and you right-click a user and say Settings, it'll bring you to this same list of options as well. If you double-click that user, down here on the very bottom under the Settings link, that'll take you to that as well, where you can customize that per user or per group. But there's some other good ones in here that I like to highlight when I talk about this one as well. A really good section is the Explorer section there. Here it allows you to specify some kind of lesser used ones. Down here is a little bit kind of interesting. If you open a file, do you want it to automatically check that file out so I can already start making changes to it? Obviously, if someone already has a file checked out, it's not going to check that file out. They already have it. But if no one has it checked out, it'll automatically check it out for you. Same thing for the edit command. So if you right-click a file and say edit, it'll automatically check that file out so you can immediately start making changes without having that extra step of right-click checkout. So if you don't view files as read-only a whole lot, maybe that's a good option for particular users. Another good one is the reference dialog list here. And this one is the behavior of PDM when you check out files, or checkout files or check-in files, or change state. So if when I check out files, it's asking me here, let me see, so this one here, when I check out files, do I want all of the child parts and sub-assemblies to be selected for checkout as well? Or do I only, when I check out a file, do I only want to check out that top level assembly? So you can specify that there. Same thing for changing state. So when I submit a file for approval, or submit a file, or maybe approve a file if I'm an approver, what do you want the system to do? Do you want to submit files and drawings together through your approval process, or do you want those two to be separate and have your approval process address those separately? So that's where you'd specify those options there. There's a whole bunch more in here that I don't have time to go over, but definitely worth taking a look. And again, if you right-click the PDM menu bar up there and say Customize Menus, that's kind of a quick way to get to it from the user interface. So that's one of the things that I like to talk about in our user and administrator trainings. The other one is customizing check-in and change state columns. And this one's a little bit more niche, I would say, but definitely a useful one if you're a user. So I'll show you what I mean. If I browse into my projects folder here, I'm going to take a look at maybe some CAD files. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right-click my top level. This is a gas grill assembly. I use this sometimes for examples in my classes, so this might be familiar to you. If I right-click that file and say check out, oh, that's not what's what I want. I have an option for checkout files silently selected, so let me uncheck that real quick so I can show you what it's going to look like. It's not going to let me do it here. Okay, so with the same thing with the checkout as the change state. So I'll show you when I change the state. I'm going to right click and say submit for approval. And in this list that comes up, it's going to show me obviously the assembly that I selected, as well as all of the sub-assemblies and parts and all that kind of thing, as well as the drawing that's related to that assembly in this case. Couple of tips here. This is actually new with 2017, so if you have a 2016 version or earlier, this doesn't really apply here. But with the 2017 version, you should be able to right-click the columns list up here, and you can actually select them more to customize the columns that you want to show when you're submitting a file for approval. So any variable that's in the data card for those files, you can display information and sort by that information in the submit for approval or change state dialog. So that's a good one. That capability has been around since 2014 for checking files in and checking files out, but they just added that to the change state dialog as well. While we're here, one other thing I like to point out, if you right click anywhere in this window, you get this option for show reference selection controls. And that's a really interesting one. So by default, I just have all of these single checkboxes to check off for all of these parts and subassemblies. If I select show reference selection controls, it actually gives me a second checkbox there next to any files that have references in the vault. So if I select that second box, it gives me more control over any subassemblies that I'm selecting in all parts. So when I select that second one, it's going to select that subassembly as well as any related child files. Any other examples I have in here? See with this propane valve, yeah, it looks like it has a couple of other parts related to it. So it gives you more control, makes it a little bit easier to select subassemblies within this list. And again, that's right-clicking in the white space or right-clicking any of the files in here and saying show reference selection controls, and you get that second checkbox. You also have options for selecting all, and then you can check them off if you want to, select everything in there. But you may want more fine-grained control over what you're selecting for submitting for approval or what you're selecting for checking in and checking out files. So that's a couple of tips there. If you right-click and you can customize your columns, and then also reference selection control. Both of those are handy ones for saving you some time submitting files to the vault. All right, so the next service I want to highlight here is our migration service. And this is really all about moving files over from another system, another PDM system. So if you need to move over or if you have all your files in an existing PDM system, whether it's Workgroup PDM, which is the legacy, the older PDM software that we offer, or if you have it in another PDM system already and you want to move that into the new system, we offer our services for moving over any revision history for those files, all of the file references for all of those revisions, any custom property data that comes with the files. We can move all of that over for you, saving a whole bunch of time. If you try to do these migrations yourself, I've seen companies try to do it. It's going to give you a lot of headaches. So this is definitely a good one to take advantage of. In our migration services, typically what it looks like is usually we would do it kind of an online. It's kind of more of an ongoing process. Oops, it's asking me to change there we go. What it would look like is we would take for example, if you're already using our Workgroup PDM software, we would take a copy of your Workgroup vault that we can do some testing on. You can still work in your other system while we're doing our testing, because it's just a copy that we have. Do all of our testing on the copy. Usually, I would say maybe a few weeks to a couple of months, depending on, usually it's up to you as far as your testing and the complexity of your vault and that kind of thing. But we would do all of our testing on the vault, and then when we're ready to go live and we're comfortable that all of the files are importing correctly and everything's looking great, we would take another copy of your vault so that we get all of the changes you've made since that time and import those into the vault for kind of a final production version. And then that's when you would switch over and start using the new system. So there's really no downtime as far as the migration. And actually, I have a kind of something related to migrations that I think I don't talk about too much in any of the classes that we teach, but I think it's kind of an interesting application to PDM versions and revisions. And what that is manually creating versions in the vault. So let's say the situation where maybe I have a user who isn't trained so well, or maybe just made a mistake and they went offline, or they're working from home and they start working on a file on their desktop. So I have this tabletop panel part on my desktop that I've been working on at home, and really it already exists in the vault. Excuse me, already exists in the vault. I have this tabletop panel part in there. It's on its second version already, so we've already been working on it a little bit. But I want to submit this file on my desktop as a new version of that same file in the vault. So I want this to go to version 3. And so how would I do that? First thing I'd want to do is I want to check out this part in the vault. Right now, no one has it checked out. You can see in this checked out by column. No one has it checked out, so anyone can check it out and make changes. So I'll go ahead and select it, and I'll click the checkout button to check that file out. Puts my name on it there. Once I have that file checked out, what I can do is I can actually just drag and drop this existing part as long as it has the same name as that file in the vault. If I drag and drop that into the vault, it'll ask me, would you like to replace the existing file with this new file? And that's a little bit of a scary message, I know, for a lot of people, because they say, oh no, I don't want to remove all the history of that file and replace it with this new one. What you're actually doing here is replacing the local file that you have on your local hard drive with this new one from your desktop. So we can say yes here to replace it. And maybe if I refresh here, I need to make a change. Let's try, let's simulate this here. Sorry about that. Copy the name and replace the existing. Okay, so I'll try that one more time. I have this file checked out. I want to replace it with the work that I've done for my desktop, so I'll drag and drop it in there. I'll replace what was already in there with this new file, and then if I right-click that file or select from the PDM menu up there, checkin. Oh, requiring a comment, new version. I checked that file in and it created a new version of the same file without destroying the history. So if I look at the history of that file now, you can see that new version that I checked in is now checked in as the latest, creates a new version for me with the information in that file. And that's kind of a way you could also potentially go a different direction with this file, because as you saw, I just pulled a different file from my vault, completely separate file, onto my desktop, renamed it to the same name as this one, and replaced, and it added version 3 to that same file, and it's a completely different file. But if you go back in the history, you can view what that file used to look like as well as the new version I checked in. So that's kind of a way that you'd import if you made a mistake, or you just forgot to be working in the vault at all times, and maybe you're working outside the vault and want to bring new things in. That's how you do it. You would check the file out, replace the local copy, and then check that file in, and it will create a new version for you there. So a little bit of a migration or a legacy data import technique there. If you're interested in more information about legacy data migration into the Vault, I actually did my last webinar on that exact topic, so feel free to go into our videos section of our website and check that out. It's called Legacy Data, Managing Legacy Data in the Vault. That's what that's called. Okay, so that's migrations. Next one is Tuneup services. So if you have an existing Vault, maybe if you've been using PDM for a while, and it's starting to be a little bit sluggish, it's not working exactly how you want it to, maybe it has some issues in there. Our Tuneup services are kind of is our newest service that we offer, and it's what it is we would come in, take a look at all of the back-end settings for your Vault, make different tweaks and performance boosting kind of changes to your Vault, work with you to address any outstanding issues. Like if you're having an issue checking in files that's taking too long, we can take a look at those specific issues as well. But if not, if you just want general performance improvements, we can always take a look at those with the Tuneup services. And kind of an example of something that we'd be looking at with the Tuneup service is your SQL Server configuration. So I'll open up SQL Server Management Studio. I have that open here. If you're not familiar with this, that's okay. It's more on the IT side. So on the back end, I have my database for my Vault, and this is where all of my metadata for my files or information about my files are stored. So anything from custom property information or data card information to file references to permissions or any kind of settings in the Vault, all of that would live in the database for that Vault. And this is where you go to access that directly. Generally, it's recommended not to make direct edits to this database because you can cause big issues for yourself. But it is good on the IT side to make sure you're having constant backups, and there's some performance tweaking that we can do in here. So I'll just show an example of that. If I right-click my Vault there and say Properties, right-click my Vault database and say Properties, I have a section for Options there, and I have an option for Recovery Model. And this is a really common one that we see on our tech support side quite a bit. People call in and say, we've been using our Vault for a while and it's really sluggish opening up check-in windows or change state windows. Anytime it needs to generate a file tree to view all the references, it's really slow to come up. That's a really common one caused by this recovery model being set to full. And it's set to full by default in the when you create your Vault for the first time, but we always recommend setting this to simple. And the reason why we recommend doing that, well, I guess I'll go some background with what the recovery model is. Basically, setting this to simple is you're limiting your transaction log size. So the transaction log, I have this open here. For all of my Vaults, I have a bunch of Vaults. You'll probably just have the one production Vault, or maybe you have a test Vault in here. I have this, here's my demo database. So this is the primary data file for my database that contains all of the tables and all of the information in my database, as well as the log. So this is the transaction log file for that database. So every transaction, every action that's happening in PDM is getting recorded in that log. And what we're doing here when we're setting this recovery model to simple is we're limiting that log size so that it doesn't get really large and unmanageable for us. And when you're setting the recovery model, there's a couple things you want to think about. There's some always, with anything performance related, there's going to be pluses and minuses to this. So what the full recovery model is going to give you is every single transaction that happens in your Vault, it's going to record that in the transaction log, and that allows your transaction log to be very large, potentially, if you have a lot of transactions. By setting this to simple, it limits that size so that it doesn't automatically grow on you to an unmanageable size. And usually, it doesn't make too big of a difference what the size of that transaction log is, but as it starts to grow, those of you maybe on the IT side would know that if you have any kind of auto growth enabled on your hard drive, if your hard drive is set to increase its size as needed, that can cause fragmentation of your transaction log, which is a big performance hit for PDM, and I've seen it cause a lot of issues with any kind of database activity. Anytime the PDM system needs to access the database, that could potentially be very sluggish. So you usually want to set your transaction log on, best practice is to set it on a separate drive somewhere and allocate the proper amount of space to it so that you're not constantly increasing that space, or you don't need to truncate or lower the size of that transaction log later on, because both of those things can cause fragmentation, which will cause performance hits to PDM. So, and I always recommend setting that to simple. The reason why you potentially want to set it to full for some other programs would be that the advantage to it is that you can go back in time to any, if you do need to restore your database, you can go back in time to any point, any transaction that's happened in that database. But PDM, because it's already versioned within the software, you don't need that level of flexibility when you're restoring your database after maybe a crash, or if you want to go back. You want to make sure that the database and the archives, which is the physical files that are being stored on the server, you want to make sure those line up exactly. So making sure you're taking full backups of your database probably every day, I would say at least, is best practice, as well as setting the recovery model to simple, and that should get you going where you need to go. And making sure that you have some automation happening in here, so automatic backups is key to keeping your workload down as an IT person or as a PDM admin. So we go over that in the administration class, and if you're interested in more information on that, definitely recommend taking that class. So that's an example of something we'd take a look at with the Tuneup services service that we offer to kind of boost your performance. But there's a bunch of things in SQL that you can do to improve performance depending on your size, complexity of your vault, and your needs, and we can always address that with those. Okay, so that's the PDM services portion. I did want to throw in, there was kind of an extra example I wanted to throw in. If we had time, looks like we do. So one thing, this is kind of more for the PDM administrators as well as users. So from the administration tool, as a PDM administrator, if you've been doing this for a decent amount of time, you'll know that you can edit Datacards. And what Datacards are, I like to say, is kind of the heart of the vault. It's the middleman that is managing all of the metadata for all of your files. All the information for all your files is stored in these Datacards. So by editing them, you can specify which information you want to show and which information you want to be able to search on, as well as a whole bunch of other options in your vault kind of go through this data card. So in this case, I have an example data card here. This is just the one that we drew up for Hockridge Systems data card. So this is what's going to be showing when I select a part or an assembly in my vault. But if I select this project number field here, what I'm doing with this field is specifying a default value. So if I go down here to the default value on the lower right, I can show that it shows that I'm pulling the folder data card variable value for the variable number, project number, excuse me. So what this is doing, as soon as a file is added to a folder in the vault, it's going to look at that project number value for that folder and automatically fill out this form for me based on that value. And then I also have default overwrites selected, so that if there's anything in the custom properties of that file already and it gets added to the vault, that custom property will be overwritten with whatever the project number value is. So that's a couple of options we have there. One thing that a lot of people don't know about default value, default values are only set the very first time you add a file to the vault. So as soon as I drag and drop a file into the vault, that default value is applied, and at no other point does it come into play. So why is that relevant? Well, I'll kind of give you an example here. Go ahead and open up my second project here, this P-00002 project, and I'll go ahead and drag and drop this part into that folder. But before I do that, I'll take a look at that folder's properties. So it looks like this folder has the project number of P-00002 in the data card. So as soon as I add that file to that folder, it should pull that value into the data card of the file. It looks like it did. It pulled that project number P-00002 and added it to that file's data card automatically as a default value. So that's great. That worked. I'll go ahead and check in that file. And we're looking good. It's got that P-00002 project in there. But what happens if I want to move this part to another project? I'll go ahead and do that. I'll right click and cut and paste it into my first project here. So even though I pasted it into my first project folder, this P-00001, and that 001 has the correct project number in the data card, it didn't inherit that new project number from the new folder that it was added in. And that's kind of a byproduct of default values only being applied the first time that file was added to the vault. So that's definitely a consideration to look for. If you do have this, if you run into this situation, or if you want to automatically apply values to all files in a particular folder, what you can do to fix this is select that P-01 folder that you added, and you can say modify, update, and there's a values in files option there. So if and this is kind of an underused one a little bit, I think. I don't see a lot of people using this one, but it is useful. So you can, this wizard allows you to be really specific about what information you're pushing to which files. So I'll run through it here real quick. I want to push this information to files in all of my states in my vault, in my workflows. Looks like the drawing is the only one it's picking up. And you can update it with the new project number. If I think, let me see. Yeah, just as an example, I can update the new project number in that file and pull the new project number from that folder, the new folder that it's in. It's asking me which configuration do I want this to apply for, and then I can finish and it'll push that value in there. So that's kind of the purpose of that. Again, that modify, you have to have the folder selected there. Modify, update values in files. And that's a good one. That's also a good way, if you select the folder, you can push any information from this data card into all files or some of the files in a particular folder in batch. So that's kind of a way that you could update a lot of files if you wanted the same value applied to a bunch of them. Kind of a quicker way to do it rather than editing all of the data cards for all of the files individually. And again, modify, update values in files is a good one. Okay, so that's the four kind of main categories of services that we do offer. And before I move on here, I want to show just on our Hockridge website. Let me go to this real quick. Maybe I'll just go to the website and show you what it looks like. Under the products dropdown, we have a SOLIDWORKS PDM option there. Also have a PDM services link down in the lower left. From the SOLIDWORKS PDM page, you can get into our PDM services page there. And this will list all of the services that I'm talking about in this presentation, as well as some more information about them. And then if you do want even more information about it, or you're interested in purchasing one of them, you can always click the Contact Us button from within there. And it'll give you a chance to specify, your information, a comment about what information you're looking for. This also has all of our links and emails and phone numbers for all of our other services, for our tech support and that kind of thing. But you can specify a product of interest, in this case PDM, and then throw your information in there. And then you should hear back from one of our representatives with more information on that, whatever you're looking for. So again, that's under products, and then either the SOLIDWORKS PDM link or the PDM services link in that list. And that's Hockridgecom. Okay, so that's all I have for our services portion of it. The next thing I want to talk about is our custom solutions that we offer. So this is going to be our Hawkware team. And our Hawkware team, we have some developers on staff that will work with you on customizing PDM. If PDM doesn't do something that you need it to do out of the box, we can always work with you. It has an open API, which means that we can program different custom solutions for what you're looking for. But we do have some pre-made ones already on our website that might be interesting for you. I added a few of my favorites here on this slide. So just real quickly, XBOM is kind of one of our largest, most comprehensive ones. It greatly extends the bill of materials capability of PDM, and this one is great in a few different situations. If you have multiple sources of bill of materials that you want to import into your PDM system, like maybe you're managing your bill of materials in Excel files or CSV files outside the vault, and you want to mesh that with PDM bill of materials, you can do that using XBOM. It's also great for managing larger bill of materials. So if you want to sort and have greater abilities to sort and filter on items in your bill of materials, you can do that with XBOM. And then also maintaining a parts list for your bill of materials. Maybe you have some parts that maybe you don't want to model up yourself, things that don't make sense to model, like maybe glue or Loctite, or it's something that you wouldn't want to model but you might want to include in your bill of materials. You can maintain a list of materials, or a list of parts that you can use as kind of a standard library of pieces that you can add to your bill of materials, along with all of its properties and that kind of thing already filled out for you. So if you're interested in learning about XBOM or any of these products, feel free to click that contact link on our website, and we can give you, there's videos about each one of these on our Hawkware site, which I'll show. And then I guess I'll get through these and I'll show you what that looks like. So Teamworks Pro is the second one here. Teamworks Pro is a web-based dashboard for project management. So if you're interested in tracking your projects, time management kind of stuff, what percentage a certain project you have completed, or you can look at specific users and look at their profiles and see, they've put this much work into a project. It'll show you a bunch of graphs and readouts for project completion. And again, that's a web-based dashboard that you can access via Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer, and it'll show you different information about your projects. And that's I want to say that's our most recent one. That's a really interesting one that they've been working on. Next one is Serial Renamer. This one's kind of a little more specific. So if you want to automatically rename your files with an automatically incrementing serial number based on a particular file type, maybe you want to maintain a different list of file names for your parts as you do for assemblies or Microsoft Office documents, and you have different schemes for automatically naming them. You can keep track of all of those using the Serial Renamer. I'm not doing a great job of explaining. It's a little bit more complicated for this one, but more information can definitely be found on our Hawkware Apps website, along with a video showing what it does. That's a really good one I've seen help out a lot of customers. And then the last one is Transition Blocker. This one's a good one if you want to ensure that a parent assembly is not approved or released if any of its child components haven't been approved. So it will lock you out of approving a file or submitting a file for approval, depending on what you're looking for, depending on different conditions of the children of that assembly. And again, more information on our Hawkware Apps website. So if you go browse into, I think I have it open here, I can show you. So here's our hawkwareapps.com website. It'll show more information about each of these products that we already offer, that we already have created, and if you select any one of these, it'll give you even more information along with a video showing what it does. If any of these solutions that I've shown here they're close but don't really meet your criteria for something you want to add to your vault, no worries, feel free to contact them anyway. They do custom add-ins all the time, so they can just create something for you that'll work in your specific in your specific situation. So that's what our Hawkware team is all about. So definitely check that one out. And I think that's all of the material I had. So thanks for joining me for the webinar here. Here's some links for our PDM services team, our Hawkware team, and our technical support team. All of these guys work really hard, so if they should be able to find an answer for you. If you do have any questions or issues, feel free to contact us in any of those links or call our numbers for quicker access. Thanks.